Spring has sprung in the Triad, and the sharp team with Highlands Mortgage is springing into action to help you buy a new home. With the housing market heating up, the best time to act is now to get into a house by the summer. If you've been waiting to move or have questions about buying a home, you can rely upon the Sharp team to listen to your concerns, work proactively with you to find a loan that is right for you, and will take the very best care of you. Call the Sharp team today or just Google their website. When you're grilling on your new back patio or sipping tea on the front porch, you'll be very happy that you did.
Get started with an email to our friend Ashley McKenzie Sharp, Ashley at sharploans.com, ASHLEY at sharp, SHARPE, loans.com, Ashley at sharploans.com.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? We are here on the brink of spring. You're laughing, Blake, and I'm just going to take people behind the curtain because I royally screwed up that intro. Maybe I'll just keep it in. Maybe I'm keeping it in because, hey, man, it's okay to show our warts from time to time.
I mean, look, you
right.
do this professionally, right? This is something that I'm
clearly, yeah.
Look, you're human.
Yeah, I proved it. What I was trying to say was we are on the brink of spring as we record this episode, which means it is a great time to catch up with our real estate guy, Blake Ginther from the Ginther Group. Blake, we usually spend a few minutes talking before the episode about what we're going to get into in our conversation. But because of the time of year and because of what you're seeing, you immediately said, this might just be a good time for just a good old fashioned market update, right?
Yeah.
And why do you say that?
Well, because I've been saying the same thing, right, for eight or 9 months around low inventory, same old. And it's not that that's not true, but the market does have a different feel this spring than I think what people were predicting or realtors were thinking. It's not going to be, oh, here we go again, bonanza, crazy spring. I don't think it's early, right? We're doing this mid-March. So it could get there and it probably will, like it always does in certain pockets. But it's not just in general, the entire market, the entire triad will be a bidding war in everything. And every price point, we're definitely not there. And I think we thought we would be there because the inventory stayed so low.
So why are we not there then?
There's just not that many buyers, right? There aren't as many buyers. I think there'll be more as we get closer to school letting out than there are. Good. I hope so, because there's a lot more sellers coming. I mean, I personally know of a handful of friends who are going to be selling in the coming weeks. I'm going to be a seller, right? I've got first time I've done a flip in a long time, right by your house, that I actually snuck by your house the other day and waved. And I'm not sure if you knew that was me.
Thanks for stopping by and saying hello. Appreciate that.
I actually had my daughter in the car, and I just knew that she was antsy and not even happy with me going by the house. But I'm saying I am speaking as a seller, right? It's not. I don't think any seller should expect the crazy 30 offers that we had there for a couple of years, or even 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 that we had last year. I think you might get a couple. The market, I said right before we hit record, that the market feels very similar to me, and it reminds me of 2019.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because that leads perfectly into my next question, which is, can you take us back pre-COVID? What was our springtime like in 2019?
Yeah, so we had a little more inventory than we have right now, but we also had a lot more buyers, I think, honestly, because rates were in the 4s, and it was, it was a healthy market, and your money went further than it does today, right? In every capacity, in the grocery store and in real estate, and and I think sellers had the expectation that their home was going to sell, that if they did the right things, got it ready correctly and priced it, positioned it correctly, they were going to sell. And they were maybe going to get in more than 1 or 2, like maybe a couple offers, maybe. They didn't go in thinking they were going to get multiple offers. They went in thinking they would get a strong offer as long as they did everything right. And maybe two, maybe three, maybe. Now look, always the outliers of Buena Vista and West End and Ardmore that have always in our market historically been a little crazier than most of the other pockets, right? There's always an outlier. I'll even throw Sherwood, your neighborhood, right? Your Sherwood into the mix. That they were becoming that in 2019 a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and buyers, by the way, shouldn't expect to be the only buyer interested in the home, right? Just like back then, they knew, if I react accordingly with a strong offer, I don't have to promise that I'm going to name my firstborn after them. I don't have to put 5,000 or 5 figures DD, maybe 5,000, but not 5 figures, probably DD. I don't have to be crazy, right? I have to be solid, and I shouldn't drag my feet. But right now, Adam, that's a tricky spot for both parties. Sellers are still thinking I should get crazy offers, amazing offers, a ton of them. And buyers are still thinking, a lot of them are thinking it's either that world still, or worse, I'm not getting in a bidding war, which is like, I don't think we're there, right? We're not there.
Yeah, this sounds a little bit like you're not going to see the craziness just because you've got both sides expecting something and they're too far apart and they're waiting for the other side to blink, maybe.
It actually does feel like a good old fashioned, I've got a sixth grader. It feels like a good old fashioned stare off,
Yes.
And who's blinking first?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And the challenge is buyers are going to lose that stare off because there are still enough need to buy buyers out there and moving to our area that they need to get out of that mentality, right? Just make a strong, you like the house, don't think you're weird, because you're not, right? I mean, you might be, but you're not weird in the sense that you're not the only one who probably likes that house. And if your agent tells you it's priced appropriately in today's world, not in pre-COVID world, but today's world, then pull the trigger and be normal about it. You don't have to do something crazy, but don't be slow and think you're the only person in the world.
Yeah. Don't wait for a price drop. Don't wait for it to be on the market for a certain number of days and hoping that you can bid less than asking. Just make a good, sound, competitive offer, right?
Yeah, man. We're not going to touch politics, but as I just finished stalking that and you were saying, I was like, gosh, sounds familiar. it's like, don't be extreme. Just don't be extreme. Both of you, just come on to the center.
Boy, that ship has sailed, my friend. That ship has sailed. Okay, so you mentioned that there's people consistently moving to this state, to this area, and there are buyers out there. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on something you said earlier, which, I asked you, hey, why aren't we going to experience a crazier spring and maybe things won't be as chaotic as what we originally thought? And you said there's just not enough buyers out there. That doesn't mean that there are buyers, but there's not enough buyers. Why don't you think there are a ton of buyers out there right now?
I think that cost of living has impacted people, right? I do think even though we talk like inflation's not a thing, it's still a thing, right? Anybody who's been to the grocery store can tell you, right? Your bill has gone up. Every bill has gone up. I mean, your electric bill has gone up. I mean, everything is still very expensive. And I do think economically there are a fair amount of people who are either thinking about quitting their jobs, have been laid off, right? We're still in a similar spot when you look at all the stats, but it feels very different. Right. I do think that's part of it. I think that interest rates literally have eliminated people from being able to. And I don't think that's going to change. I think we're here. If people are waiting for them to come down, like we've said on past podcasts, they're just going to be massively disappointed. And the hardest part is I actually do believe, even though everything we've been saying, you might not hear it this way. I actually think a year from now, property values will be a couple percentage points more expensive, right? So it's not like if you wait a year, rates will come down and the properties will be less. I don't think so. I do think at some point in the next 12 to 18 months, the rates will come back down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
not under 5. We talked about this last month in our episode. Like,
yeah,
if you're waiting for it to go under 5 again, you might be waiting for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody ought to hope from a pure like economic fiscal perspective that we're not there for a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, never, right? Never. But anyways, and that's the only lever they have if we get into a rough sled. But I do think that overall, it's going to be slower because there's going to be less buyers. There's still less sellers. The inventory is still not high by any stretch. It is still quote unquote a seller's market. It is I'd say it's just a soft seller's market.
It's time to get serious about your financial future. It's never too early, but it could be too late to get started. And that's oftentimes the hardest part, getting started. How much do I save? Where do I invest? Do I save for college or retirement? How much for each? And who do I talk to about it all? Okay, we'll keep things simple for now and help you answer the last one. We recommend you begin with a local financial advisor. And that's Jennifer Johnson of Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. She'll sit down with you for a complimentary introductory consultation and go over all of your questions. Get started on the path to achieving your financial goals. Visit threemagnoliasfinancialadvisors.com or call 336-701-1600. Get comfortable with your financial future. Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. Retirement, financial planning, and investments. Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. Three Magnolias Financial Advisors and Cetera Advisor Networks are not affiliated. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.
Okay, so from the seller's perspective, then, if a seller is out there thinking, okay, it's springtime, the last few springs, there's been multiple offers, 5-figure due diligence numbers, I'm in a great place if I want to sell right now. What are some of the things that sellers think that they might be able to get away with if they're in 2021, 2022 mode, that if we're going back to 2019, it's like, okay, reset your expectations a little bit?
Yeah, I know. I think that's it's a key thing. I think, and we've talked on this on past podcasts. I definitely feel like I've hinted that you should, but now you really need to, right? Put out the pine needles and paint the threshold and, paint your wood rot from the exterior that everybody gets in North Carolina. You've got to take the extra steps to make it look like you give a darn. You don't have to we're not to the point where you have to renovate the outdated kid's bathroom. I mean, that's a price. The price has to be appropriate for that, right? But you don't have to do like massive renovations, but you do need to show that you care, and you do need to price it appropriately. That's probably the bigger kicker. Is I do think that there are still too many people being completely refusing to look at data.
Yeah. Yeah. And pricing way too high. But I even recall, when people were selling in that spring of 2021, when things were insane, people buyers would be willing to bypass inspections and bypass appraisals. Is that something that people probably shouldn't expect right now?
Yeah. I just was talking this morning on a Zoom with a couple of the team members, and one said that they did bypass inspection, but it's a low price point that they're going to do a ton of work to, right? So it's not like that's going to be a common thing, though. And if the home needs a lot of work, then they might bypass it because they're already thinking that way. But if it's just a normal sale, I think it should be. That's such a blah word to say normal. But they should expect normal.
Go through the regular process.
Yeah. Do the normal stuff that you used to have to do for all of eternity, but maybe didn't for a year or two. And you should expect the normal process where people will give you still a very competitive amount of commitment monies immediately to take your home off the market, but not enough that you can be a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. We touch on this seemingly every episode, but for anybody that's new to the festivities, can you provide kind of your theory as it relates to pricing? Because right now, people think if it's a seller's market and inventory is low and they feel like they're going to get multiple offers, they might be willing to say, if I want to, I've talked to 3 different realtors and this one tells me that they can get this price for my home, which is more than what the other ones tell me to list it at. So I'm going to go here. Can you explain your theory on the matter?
Yeah, for sure. That I appreciate that, because that is definitely happening. Where I think because of the unknown element of the market, people are meeting with more than one seller, or more than one agent, and I think unfortunately they're meeting with more than one. Typically, we've talked about this in past podcasts. They're meeting with the easy button folks who are offering them cash offers that are, frankly, terrible. And some of them are taking them. And by the way, they can get normal cash offers typically, but they only know that way if they're going to get a handful, right? What most of them don't get a handful. They get, 1 or 2, tops 3. Honestly, it's funny. I got totally sidetracked with the cash offer thing because it's so pertinent right now, Adam, that I was like, oh, I got to throw that in there. But ask me that question one more time and I'll try to stay on task.
Tell us your theory on effective pricing if you're a seller.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that sellers if they meet with 3 agents, they're going to get in the house should be in the 300 vicinity, or actually let's take it up because the average price is now 325. So let's say it's 400, right? Let's say a seller goes into it thinking they're going to get around 400. And usually sellers are pretty close-ish, right? And they meet with, one agent tells them 450. One agent tells them, a little over 4, and one agent tells them, 389, right? And what more often than not happens is they're going to go with the 450 agent, and more often than not that will cost them money.
Yep.
Right. And so I always say, choose your agent by their marketing and the confidence you have and trust you have in them, right, along with their marketing plan. But a marketing plan is not a price. So don't pick them by price, right? And have the conversation. More often than not, the price in today's range, I always say I give folks a range of correctness, right? And in that scenario, my range of correctness probably would have been 390 to 425, right? And I probably would say, by the way, I don't think you get 425 starting at 425.
No.
I think if the home is worth 425 in today's market, it still can be gone up a little bit, right? So maybe 419.9, maybe 415. But understand that if we don't do everything to position the home in the right light, right? If we don't do all the painting and the pine needles and all the things, then we might get double-digit showings and not get our offer and have to reduce.
Yeah. We've said it how many times? Let the market determine what the home sells for. And if you tell the market what it's supposed to be, and the market's not going to listen that often. I remember you talk about your range. When we sold our rental property with you guys, you provided 3 different options with ranges for each. Option 1, you do nothing to the home. Here's the range that we think you're going to get. Option 2, you do A, B, C, D, E, and you'll get this range. Option 3, you do A, B, C, D, E plus a bunch of other stuff, and each one will cost you this, and this will be your range of sale. And not to brag on you guys, but we ended up getting more than what the range was with the option that we chose because it was priced effectively. It was, this isn't what we think it's going to sell for. This is where you should price it so that you get the most competition.
That's right. And
competition drives it up.
We are, and we're still in that market, specifically in locations you can expect it. But in overall Triad locations, if done well and priced right, you can expect at or slightly above asking if done right. And but I think right now what's happening is there's way too much overpricing. And so consumers are thinking, well, I'm going to have to do the old fashioned thing and price it at 450 to get my 425. And that's not accurate. And by the way, the other thing is they can't unhear 450, right? They were probably thinking 400-ish, right? And they were probably not that far off. It maybe 410, maybe 415. but they can't unhear 450. And so that's what's happening is sellers are pricing too high and having to reduce. And we are seeing that. We're seeing
that. See if you could follow what I'm trying to say, because I don't know that I follow it in my head, but is it fair to say that there's no guarantees, but so I'm going to use, is it more likely that if you price at 425, you're going to get 450 than if you price at 450 and get 450?
In our current market, I think if in this scenario, if the home is really probably should be selling in the 14s, maybe 420s, in that market, in our current market, they're most likely, if they price at 425, to get for probably, if it's worth 14s, right? If they price at 425, if they price at 450, honestly, they're going to end up probably getting timed out with that agent, coming back with a new agent, and the new agent will list it at 4099 or 400, and then they'll sell somewhere in that vicinity, but they will have cost themselves $15,000 most likely.
Yep.
If they had listed with the right agent, with a good marketing plan, done it right, and listed it in that 415 vicinity, then they could have been driven up to 425.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we're not in a market where you can get, if the home should be in the 14s, that you can get 450 anymore. And that's hard for some sellers. Like, I think they genuinely are like, I'm going to break a record. I mean, you might not. We're not in a record-breaking market. We're in a solid market.
Yeah. That's what we've always really strived for in this community. What are the most popular price points right now in our local market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the average price is now $325, and I think that anything under 300 is gone if it's in any kind of condition, right? Any kind of move-in ready condition. So that's still the hottest, but I do think that 300 to 450 price point is still incredibly solid. I think that's where people are missing the mark the most on pricing, unfortunately. And so I think that it's probably the trickiest market. Ironically, 450 to 650 is rock solid, way more than it was in 2019. That's probably the biggest difference in price in our current climate, because prices, I mean, a 450 house was 300 pre-COVID.
Yep. All right. This is a good old-fashioned, really solid, good old-fashioned market update, Blake. People may have more questions about their situation or what's happening around their area, whether they're a buyer or a seller, or just want to know more. How can they find you and the great folks at the Ginther Group?
Hit us up at our newly refreshed, redesigned website, theginthergroup.com, theginthergroup.com, or give us a shout at 336-283-8689, 283-8689.
All right, my friend. Are you wearing a short sleeve polo shirt?
No, it's not. We're not quite there. I mean, Actually, I don't know if you've been out. I was just, it's getting warm out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I can only see your shoulders. I couldn't see your arms. So I was wondering, are you getting?
Felt a little premature.
Sun's out, guns out for for Blake. All right, my friend. Always good to talk to you. Take care.
Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode on the Triad Podcast Network. Our mission is simple: provide information, advice, and stories about the people and places that make the North Carolina Triad such a great place to be. You can find us by searching Triad Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much wherever you like to listen. If you like what you heard and want to support the show and those that contribute, we would truly appreciate a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It helps spread the word along, as do your shares on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Triad Podcast. To get in touch with us, simply email info@triadpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.